a family doctor based in Waterford City. He's a family practitioner for the last 20 years, but goes at his business, so to speak, in a slightly different way to others, in that he talks about a toolkit for meaning and well-being. His name is Dr. Mark Rowe, and he's with me now in studio. You're very welcome indeed.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark.
You have a couple of little phrases like that. You don't like doctors and pills for ills. And you talk about all sorts of complicated things, like who you spend time with determines who you are. Like who your mother might have said to you, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. But you go along with that.
I do, and really, Marian, this is so interesting. This is what's called the mirror neuron in the brain. And thousands of years ago, the mirror neuron kept us safe when we were living in caves and we all had to stay with the crowd, and wherever the crowd was, that's where we went. But recently they've found that the mirror neuron encourages us to copy, mimic and imitate those people we spend most time with. Now, intuitively, any parent out there knows that. You know, not only do they not want their teenagers to hang around with the wrong people, they want them to have good influences as they grow up. The mirror neuron is also involved with empathy. It allows us to feel what somebody else is feeling. And really, in terms of our relationships, which are probably the leading indicator of our well-being, in terms of happiness and how you feel on the inside, the 5 people you spend most time with have a major impact on that. And that's why it's so important, so critically important, to spend time with people that will support you, that will encourage you, that will empower you to be at your best. Because negative emotion, and I call negative emotion the 7 poison dwarfs, you know, fear, envy, anger, anxiety, guilt, shame and sad. Negative emotion has been shown to be so toxic, so contagious, that it's kind of like passive smoking in a way. You need to be mindful of the impact and the influence it can have on you.
But I mean, sadness is a part of life, is it not?
Of course it is. And, you know, the negative emotions are a normal part of everyday experience. We're all human. That's a really, really good point. The key is to balance negative emotion with enough positivity. And that's a lot more than we might think. You know, when I went to medical school, I would have thought, you know, it was 1-to-1. And even doing my GP training, we would have thought it was 2-to-1. You know, if you want to give some negative feedback, you do that in between 2 bits of positive, like the critical sandwich, they call it. Right. But now we know you need at least 3 positives for every negative, because negative emotion has such a strong hangover effect. And in your close relationships, in your close interpersonal relationships, it's about 5-to-1. Now, it's not 5-to-0. Negative emotion has a role. You know, it helps to keep us grounded. It helps to keep us focused on reality. But for a lot of people, it's too much negativity. Doesn't allow people to flourish. And, you know, one of the things that people often say was, I'm not depressed, so I don't need to focus on happiness. So the thing is, you can treat depression without teaching the skills of happiness. You can alleviate anxiety without appreciating the importance of realistic optimism. You can study gravity forever without learning how to fly.
That's a fair point.
It is.
Yeah. I think that is a fair... What is hedonic adaptation?
Hedonic adaptation basically means, Marian, that we tend to get used to our material circumstances. So, you know, many of your listeners will have been in a new car or been in somebody else's new car. And, you know, there's all that smell of newness and all the shininess. You know, then the first...
Doesn't last that long.
Doesn't last long. A few weeks and the coffee gets spilled or the first scratch. Basically, we tend to get used to our material environment. And that's so interesting, because if you're just solely focused on external sources of happiness, if you think, look, I'm going to be happy when I get the new car, or when I get the new house, or when I get X, Y, or Z, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because it really only accounts for about 10% of our potential happiness. Hedonic adaptation can be good, though, as well, because it means, Marian, that as human beings, we can be remarkably resilient. And that's really encouraging, because it means we can bounce back from adversity. We can bounce forward. So, you know, they've looked at unfortunate victims of accidents or people who've been victims in war and so on, paraplegics, and within a year they may be back at least to their baseline level of happiness and may well have exceeded it. How? They've got new perspective. They've grown.
And to get that perspective, how do you go about that perspective?
I think it comes from within, and it really comes from what I call, a prescription for happiness, which is realizing that, there are so many things you can do to feel better, and maybe the best of those is cultivating a sense of gratitude. And gratitude is all about learning to want what you have right now, not having what you want, learning to want what you have right now. And for any parents listening, one of the best things you can teach your kids at night time is to focus on 3 things that went well that day. It gets them going off to sleep, focusing on what's going well. And if you have the courage to commit to just starting to keep a little journal, a little gratitude diary, writing down 2 or 3 things every day you feel good about, if you just do that for 1 week, you will feel happier and better in yourself 6 months later. That's how powerful expressing gratitude is. And there are so many other things you can do as well in what I call this toolkit for well-being.
Like what?
Cultivating a sense of realistic optimism. Now, I'm not talking about some blind, delusional view of the future. Believing that things can get better because you're going to do something about it.
Well, I'm thinking of people who can't afford their mortgage at the moment, who are in arrears, can't supply stuff for kids that they really want to or need to, and see no light at the end of the tunnel because they can't get a job. Now, it's very hard to be telling them about optimism, isn't it?
Well, on one level, you're right. I mean, there has been a tsunami of negative stress and a tsunami of stress-related illnesses. I mean, we don't talk anymore about what illnesses are caused by stress. We say how much of every illness is triggered and precipitated by stress. But no matter what is going on, you can learn to compartmentalise it. You can learn to look at the bigger picture. And it really starts by looking at what you have to be grateful for. Looking at your health, looking at your key relationships, looking at your family.
There's a Harvard study that shows that happy people can boost your happiness by 9%.
Thanks. That's absolutely right. And that is so exciting. There's a brilliant physician in Harvard called Christakis who's been studying the power of social networks for about the last 35 years. And he's shown that happiness is contagious to 3 degrees of separation. So you feeling happier will impact on your friends' friends, and your friends' friends. And the exciting thing is that within a bubble of 3 degrees of separation, most of us know about 1,000 people. So you committing to be happier, and committing to be happier is a conscious choice because it's determined by the thoughts you choose to focus on, the emotions you choose to focus on, and the actions and behaviours you take each and every day. So by you exerting leadership in your own health, you can impact potentially on 1,000 people around you. And that's really, really exciting. And when I talk about leadership, Marian, I think that's an important point because, when many of your listeners were young children, and me, myself, 3-4 years of age, you were tucked in at night and you heard the story about the prince and the princess, and they lived happily ever after. So there is this notion that happiness is some sort of a destination that you will arrive at when you've all the ducks in a row, when everything is sorted. Whereas really, the only day you or I or anyone has is right here, right now, today. And the commitment we all need to make to ourselves is to commit to be happier. And we can all choose to be happier.
Can you?
We can.
Well, tell me what happened. You had a fire in your practice.
I did. I didn't think you were going to ask me that, but I did about 14 years ago. Yeah, we were about a year in practice, and we worked really hard setting up our surgery. And 2 guys broke in one night. It was an arson attack, and it's a day I'll never forget. Smoke billowing and the fire brigade and that, and thank God nobody got hurt. I mean, that was really, really.
You weren't living there?
No, I wasn't living there, though it was very close. It was just across the road from where I grew up, in Lismore Park in Waterford. And we got back in practice in a nearby premises within a day or two. But I wasn't back in action myself for a while. I really took that fire personally. And, all those poison dwarfs I was talking to you about earlier were jumping around in my head, having a field day. I kept asking myself all these why questions. Poor me syndrome. What did I do to deserve this? And I really wallowed in it for a few months, I'd say. And then I realised one day, I had a choice. I could keep holding on to this sort of poor me-itis and feeling sorry for myself, or I could choose to let go of it. And now I look back on that fire and I'm genuinely so grateful for the experience.
What?
I am. Because I honestly believe if I hadn't had that fire, I wouldn't be where I am today. I possibly would never have developed the Waterford Health Park. Probably would not have really got into this sort of happiness improving your health space. So the thing is, every experience we have in life, good, bad or indifferent, can teach us something very valuable if we allow it to.
The other thing that you mentioned, and it seems to me that anybody that talks about well-being or health or that at the moment are the benefits of exercise.
Oh, Marian, exercise is the greatest pill of all. And I mean, there's a list of physical health benefits as long as the wall, from preventing heart disease, diabetes, stroke, many cancers. But probably the greatest benefits of exercise are what it does between our two ears, because it releases natural painkillers called endorphins, which help us to feel more calm, more energised, more optimistic. And it brings on the happy dwarfs and happy hormones like serotonin that make us feel so much better in ourselves. And recent evidence shows that brain-derived neurotrophic factor, this is like miracle grow for the brain, is a substance that may help us grow new brain cells and prevent deterioration of the brain. When we were in medical school, we learned, when your brain was fully grown at age 18 or 21, that was it.
Yeah, I've only learned recently that it's not so, which is a very happy relief, I have to say.
It's a very exciting possibility, this thought that 90 is the new 60, that it all really depends on our mindset, that it's never too late to do new things. It's never too late to start a new hobby. It's never too late to reap the game-changing benefits of exercise. And I think the thing is, we all need to move more. Become more active during the day. Take the stairs. Park the car further from the supermarket when you do the shopping. And it's not just about aerobic exercise. Weights training for women as well as men. Very, very important to improve your strength. Flexibility exercises, Pilates, yoga. Exercise is just absolutely phenomenal in terms of what it does.
And obviously you're saying it's nearly like a tranquilizer that you don't pop into your mouth.
It's like a natural free tranquilizer. And I always enjoyed the benefits of exercise personally, but about 3 years ago, Marian, I committed to the habit of exercising every single day. And that was a really interesting experiment for me, because I had to sort of build that habit, and I had to really learn about the power of building new habits, because I was always the type of person that I would be good for a while and then I'd kind of fall off the wagon.
Hello, that sounds fairly familiar. Yeah,
the Irish winter. How are you? And it takes much longer than you realise to build a new habit. They say it takes now about 66 days. Which is
a lot.
If you look at how many of us set New Year resolutions, and then by the 1st of February we've fallen back, because I think it was John Dryden, the English poet, said that we make our habits, and then our habits make us. And we are all creatures of habit. Aristotle, the philosopher, and philosophy is so interesting in terms of its impact on health, said that excellence is a habit. And, but when you do commit to building a new habit, whether it's exercise or reading or taking up a new hobby or developing yourself, whatever it is, it becomes easier after a while to keep it going than to let go of it. And I think that's one of the big challenges in modern healthcare. Intuitively, many people know what they should do. They know they should exercise, they know they should eat well, they know they should de-stress, make time for their friends. But they haven't really maybe figured out how to do it on a consistent basis. And that is why I believe that the new paradigm, the new way of looking at how we can improve health, the golden egg for all of us, is to look at the emotions, look at the happiness and well-being, and your psychological fitness, as well as your physical health and relationships, linking it all in together.
Self-awareness?
Self-awareness is massive, because awareness precedes clarity, and clarity precedes change and choice. So awareness is massive. And you'll be familiar, Marian, with the rise in meditation practice in the last number of years. But what's really exciting is they've shown on fMRI scanners, that's functional MRI scanners, that those parts of the brain that deal with positive emotion, it's known as the left prefrontal cortex, gets bigger when you meditate. So meditating and becoming more self-aware can actually allow you to feel more positive and feel happier.
And is that part of the journal as well that you recommend?
Yeah, I think Marcus Aurelius, the Roman leader over 2,000 years ago, he wrote a book called Meditations, but really that was a journal in which he described his challenges and so on. But the real power of the journal, I believe, is that it allows you to focus on what's important for you. Psychologists say now we have over 20,000, maybe even up to 50,000 thoughts a day, and 85% of those thoughts can be negative, telling us all the reasons why we shouldn't do something, telling us all the reasons why we shouldn't even bother trying. But if you focus on the 4 or 5 things that are important for you, maybe your health, your family, your career, your relationships, write down your goals, write down your gratitude, write through any challenges or issues or problems you're having and learn to reframe them through the lens of realistic optimism. It's a very, very powerful way to set your day and get you focused.
Right. And consequently, or as a consequence of this, you won't be looking for pills for ills.
Well, I suppose what's happened in the last, 100 years is that, people think of healthcare really as being illness care. And illness involves medication and pills and so on. I'm saying we need to move it back. The modern illness care way of looking at treating illness in society is broken. It's a busted flush. We need to get back to health. Now, I'm not saying we throw, the baby out with the bathwater. Modern medicine has a really important role to play.
Yeah.
Whether it's bug-busting penicillin, life-saving chemotherapy, the blood-thinning properties of aspirin. It's very, very important. But it's not the only game in town. There are other possibilities. There are other options.
Right. Well, listen, it's very interesting way of looking at things, and I suppose that we will, we'll remember a lot of things, but the things about that you are the 5 people that you encounter, I think, is very, very interesting. Now, you are giving lectures on well-being, and you've developed it into a show. The next one is when?
There's going to be several shows in Dublin in late September, I believe in the Civic in Tala and Dunleary and Ballymun. And for me, it's just really, really interesting and a privilege to get up in front of a large group of people and try and deliver this message.
Well, I wish you every success with
Thanks,
that.
Marian.
Dr. Mark Rowe, thank you very much indeed.